Hello, friends. We are interested in the geography of our views, so please like and write in the comments from which city are you watching us, and were there loud stories of betrayal in your city. Perhaps the next story about betrayal will be from your city, and we start. The summer heat hung heavily over the small town of Riverton, Indiana, where the hum of the cicadas drowned out everything else. It was late July, and the air smelled of gasoline and freshly cut grass. Alex Carter, barely 18, stood under the hood of an old, beat-up Chevrolet in his uncle's auto repair shop, his hands black with grease and sweat dripping from his brow. He wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, smearing dirt across his freckled face, and cursed quietly as the wrench slipped again. "Damn it," he muttered, shaking his hand where the metal grazed his knuckle. His Uncle Ray, a heavy-set man with a graying beard and a permanent squint, chuckled as he sat at a workbench at the other end of the garage. "Take your time, boy. You'll break a bolt if you're in such a hurry," Ray said, not taking his eyes off the carburetor he was tinkering with. Alex muttered something in response, but did not argue. He worked in Ray's workshop from the age of 16, learning the craft from scratch. It wasn't glamorous, fixing rusty pickup trucks and overheated sedans for people who could barely pay for repairs, but it made money. And now it was important. Because Alex was no longer just a teenager tinkering with cars. He was going to become a father, and my husband. The thought still made his stomach churn, as if he had missed a step on his way down the stairs. 2 months ago, Lisa showed him a pregnancy test. They sat on the tailgate of his old Ford pickup, parked at the quarry where they had spent half their school nights, secretly drinking beer and kissing. She had been silent all day, fiddling with the hem of her summer dress, until she finally pulled out a small strip of plastic from her purse and handed it to him. 2 pink lines. "Alex," she said, her voice shaking, "what should we do?" He stared at the test, his brain feeling like it had shorted out. Lisa was also 18, fresh out of high school, with big brown eyes and a laugh that could light up a room. They had been together since their second year of school, but it was a completely different game. He swallowed, took her hand, and said the only thing that came to mind. "We'll figure it out, together." And here they are, married 2 weeks, living in a cramped spare bedroom in Alex's parents' house, an old one-story house on the outskirts of town with peeling paint and a sagging porch. The wedding was a rushed affair, held in the backyard with a rented tent and a playlist from Lisa's phone. Her mom cried throughout the ceremony, and Alex's dad tapped him on the shoulder afterward and said, "You're a man now, son. Behave accordingly." Lisa was in her 5th month. Her belly was beginning to show through her loose t-shirts. She enrolled in a local college, determined to continue studying to become a nurse, even if it meant trudging around campus with a backpack full of textbooks. Alex admired that about her, the way she refused to let it stop her from going astray. But this did not prevent the quarrels that broke out between them, sharp and sudden, like summer thunderstorms. He got home late that evening, the clock on the microwave showing 8:47 when he pushed open the creaky door. His mother was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of chili, the pungent smell filling the house. She looked back at him over her shoulder. "Wipe your shoes, Alex. I just washed the floor." Yeah, he said, pulling off his work boots at the door. He could hear the TV in the living room, some kind of reality show his father was hooked on, and Lisa's voice, quiet but with a hint of irritation, coming from the hallway. He found her in their room, sitting cross-legged on the single bed they had pushed against the wall to make room for the crib they hadn't bought yet. She had her laptop open, her textbook on her lap, and a pencil tucked behind her ear. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, with strands falling into her face. "Hi," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "How are you?" She did not immediately raise her eyes. "Fine. I have a test tomorrow, and I can't concentrate when your dad is yelling at the TV every 5 minutes." Alex sighed, rubbing the back of his head. "I'll tell him to turn it down." "It's not just that," she replied sharply, finally meeting his gaze. "This house, it's like we're children playing pretend. Today I tripped over your mom's laundry basket in the hallway again, and she keeps asking if I'm eating enough for the baby, like I don't know how to take care of myself. She just wants to help Lies. I don't need help. I need space. She closed the laptop a little tighter than necessary and set it on the nightstand, a rickety contraption Alex had made from scraps of wood when he was 14. We can't live like this forever. Alex felt a familiar lump tighten in his chest. I do what I can, okay? Ray now gives me full shifts. I work 40 hours a week. I know, she said, softening her voice. I'm not mad at you. I'm just tired, and I'm afraid. He crossed the room and sat down next to her, the mattress creaking under his weight. He put his arm around her shoulders, pulling her towards him. She snuggled close to him, resting her head on his chest, and he could feel the faint beating of her heart, or maybe it was the heart of a child. He couldn't tell. I'm afraid too, he admitted quietly, but we can handle it. You'll fail this test tomorrow, and I'll figure out how to get us out of here, to a place where there are no laundry baskets in the hallway. She laughed, short and trembling, and raised her head to kiss him. The kiss was quick, but it was enough to ease the lump inside him a little. The next morning, Lisa got up before him, already dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt, with a backpack on one shoulder. She was pouring coffee into a travel mug when he, still half asleep, in boxers and an old t-shirt, shuffled into the kitchen. Are you leaving already? He asked, scratching his chin. Yes, classes are at 9. I need to arrive early to repeat. She screwed the lid on her mug and grabbed a banana from the kitchen counter. Your mom said she's making meatloaf for dinner, so don't be late again. Understood. He watched as she headed towards the door and called out to her. Hey, Lies? She turned around, holding the doorknob. Yes? You will tear up this test. I know. She smiled, a real one, showing her dimples, and nodded. Thank you, Alex. The door clicked behind her, and he stood for a minute, listening to the quiet hum of the house waking up. My father's snoring boomed from the bedroom at the end of the hallway, and my mother rattled dishes in the sink. Outside, the sun was just rising above the trees, painting the sky orange and pink. Alex took the mug and poured himself some coffee, black and bitter, just the way he liked it. There was a long day ahead. Mrs. Henderson's minivan needed a new generator, and Ray promised overtime if he stayed to finish it. It wasn't much, but it was a step towards something better. He took a sip, burned his tongue, and thought about Lisa and the baby and the life they were building, one fat bolt, one nursing test, one cramped day at a time. A year has passed since the first child appeared in the Carter household, a tiny girl with Lisa's big eyes and Alex's stubborn chin. They named her Emma, and her birth turned their world upside down. Now, in late August, the house was filled with new sounds: crying at night, the clinking of bottles in the sink, and Lisa's soft murmurs as she rocked Emma to sleep. But to these sounds was added one more news: Lisa was pregnant again. Second child. Having barely had time to get used to life with one baby, they were preparing for the next. Emma was born on a cold February day, and the first months were chaos. Alex still remembered holding her in the hospital, so small that she fit in his one arm, wrapped in a hospital blanket. Lisa then looked exhausted, but happy. Her hair stuck to her forehead from sweat, and her eyes shone. They returned home to Alex's parents, and the cramped bedroom became even more cramped with the addition of a crib, changing table, and endless stacks of diapers. Emma was now 6 months old, crawling all over the house, leaving a trail of toys and slobbering smiles in her wake. Lisa, despite morning sickness and fatigue from her second pregnancy, continued to study. She signed up for night classes at college, leaving Emma with Alex's mom while she pored over her anatomy and physiology textbooks. Her determination was ironclad. She wanted to complete the nursing program, even if it meant sleeping 4 hours a night. Alex worked as hard as ever. He took every shift he could at Ray's shop, and sometimes worked on the side, fixing neighbors' cars in their yard. His hands were now permanently calloused, his nails black with oil, but he didn't complain. He was 19, and on his shoulders lay the responsibility of a wife, a daughter and a child who was due in 7 months. He and Lisa saved every cent, dreaming of their own home, but for now this remained a distant goal. The morning started early. The sun had not yet risen when Alex woke up to the sound of the alarm clock sharp as a nail on glass. He turned it off, trying not to wake Lisa, who was curled up next to her, hugging a pillow. Emma slept in her crib against the wall, her breathing quiet and even. Alex pulled on jeans and an old sweatshirt, went down to the kitchen and made coffee. His mother, Debbie, was already there, mixing pancake batter. "Good morning," she said, glancing at him. "You came back late again yesterday." "Yes, I had to stay late. Jim Kelly's engine stalled right on the highway. He had to be towed," Alex answered, pouring coffee into a mug. He sat down at the table, rubbing his eyes. "You're going to screw yourself, son," Debbie said, shaking her head. "You need to rest at least sometimes." "I'll rest when I buy my own house," he muttered, but there was no anger in his voice. He knew that Mom was right, but there was no choice. Lisa came down half an hour later, holding Emma in her arms. The girl rubbed her eyes with her fists, but when she saw Alex, she smiled, stretching out her arms to him. "Dad," she chirped, and this word drowned his heart every time. He took her, sat her on his lap, and gave her a piece of pancake, while Lisa poured herself some herbal tea. She couldn't have coffee now because of her pregnancy. "How are you doing with your studies?" he asked, looking at her over the mug. "Fine. Yesterday I passed my pharmacology exam. I think I'll get a B," she answered, sitting down opposite. Her face was pale, there were dark circles under her eyes, but there was pride in her voice. "4 is awesome," Alex said, smiling sincerely. "You're actually a monster. How are you pulling all this off?" "I don't know," she laughed, but the laughter quickly turned into a sigh. "Sometimes it seems like I'm going to fall apart. Emma woke up 3 times again at night, and I haven't finished writing my notes yet." "Let me stay with her today, and you sleep," he suggested. "You go to work at 7, she objected. "Ray will understand if I come an hour late. You are more important." Lisa looked at him, and gratitude flashed in her eyes. "Thank you, Alex." The day in the workshop dragged on for a long time. The heat was unbearable, and the garage turned into an oven. Alex was lying under the old Dodge, trying to unscrew a rusty bolt on the exhaust pipe, when Ray walked up and kicked him with his boot. "Hey, kid, did you hear that the old Wilson house on Maple Street is for sale?" he asked, wiping his hands with a rag. Alex got out from under the car, sat down, and stared at his uncle. "Seriously, the one with the rickety fence?" "Yeah, they dropped the price to 80,000. Still a hole, but for a start it will come down. If you cheat, the bank will give you a loan." Alex's heart began to beat faster. He and Lisa had been talking about their home for a year, but it all came down to money. 80,000 was a lot, but with his salary and savings they could afford the down payment. "We need to talk to Lisa," he said, already figuring out the numbers in his head. "Don't delay. Such options go quickly," Ray said, and went to his workbench. In the evening, when Alex returned home, Lisa was sitting on the sofa with Emma, reading her a book about hares. He kicked off his shoes, plopped down next to him, and immediately blurted out, "Lies, the Wilsons are selling their house. 80,000. We can try to take it." She froze. The book remained hanging in the air. "Are you serious?" "Yes, Ray said the bank would approve if I showed proof of income. This is an opportunity." Lisa looked at him, then at Emma, who was gnawing on the corner of a book, and nodded slowly. "Let's try it. But if something goes wrong—" "It won't work," he interrupted, squeezing her hand. "I promise." The following weeks were a whirlwind. Alex took the day off to go to the bank, where a young guy in a cheap suit leafed through their documents for a long time, frowned, but ultimately approved a loan for 30 years. The house was old, the paint was peeling, the roof was leaking in the corner, and the fence was really falling apart, but it was theirs. They signed the papers in mid-September, and by the end of the month they had moved their belongings. 2 beds, a sofa with stains from Emma's juice, boxes of clothes, and a stack of Lisa's textbooks. The first night in the new house was strange. Emma slept in her room, a small closet with floral wallpaper, and Lisa and Alex lay on the mattress in the bedroom, listening to the creaks of the old floor. "Do you hear? This is our home," Lisa whispered, clinging to him. "Yes," he replied, hugging her. "Our." But the trials were just beginning. A week after moving, Lisa had an attack of nausea so severe that she had to go to the doctor. She was put on bed rest for a couple of days, and Alex took the day off to look after her and Emma. Then the gas stove broke, and he spent half the night fixing it himself, so as not to spend money on a repairman. The money was melting away faster than he expected, and every evening he sat with a calculator, counting how much was left until payday. But there were also victories. Lisa passed another exam, this time with an A, and they celebrated with pizza and lemonade on the living room floor because they hadn't bought a table yet. Alex fixed up an old Toyota for a neighbor and earned an extra $200, which he immediately put towards a new tire for his pickup truck. And Emma said her first full sentence, "Dad, give me juice," and she and Lisa almost burst into tears with pride. Life was hard, but it was theirs. And every night, falling asleep to the creaking of the old house, Alex thought that they were still moving forward slowly, with a fight, but together. March brought with it a cold wind and the smell of melting snow, and with it a new member of the Carter family. Their son, Nathan, was born Saturday morning in a small hospital on the outskirts of Riverton. Lisa endured hours of labor, clutching Alex's hand so tightly that he was left bruised, but when the midwife finally laid the screaming baby on her chest, all the suffering dissolved in her smile. Nathan was larger than Emma at birth, almost 4 kilograms, with thick dark hair and a loud voice that immediately made it clear that he came into this world to be noticed. Alex stood nearby, looking at his wife and son, and felt his throat constrict with emotion. Emma stayed at home with his mother, and he could not take his eyes off this new life, tiny, but already so important. Lisa, exhausted but beaming, looked at him and said, "He looks like you." "Only on the outside, I hope," Alex joked, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "Because if he inherits my character, we are in trouble." She laughed weakly, and that sound became his anchor on that crazy day. At home, everything changed even more. Their little house on Maple Street, which they had worked so hard to make their own, was now filled with baby things: diapers, bottles, rattles for Nathan, and scattered blocks for Emma. Emma, who was wary of her new brother at first, quickly got used to him and now pompously called herself Big Sister, trying to put her pacifier in his mouth while Lisa wasn't looking. Lisa graduated as a nurse 3 months after Nathan was born. It was a warm June day, and Alex put on his only clean shirt to take her to the ceremony. Emma and Nathan stayed with Debbie while he sat in the stuffy college auditorium, clapping louder than anyone else when Lisa was called to the stage. She looked tired. Sleepless nights with 2 children had taken their toll, but there was pride in her walk and a folded diploma in her hands, which she clutched like a trophy. "I did it," she told him later, sitting in a pickup truck on the way home. Her voice trembled with relief. "2 children, a million tests, and I still did it." "You didn't just do it, you tore them all apart," Alex replied, glancing at her. "I'm proud of you, Liz." She smiled, leaning back in her seat, looking relaxed for the first time in a long time. But there was no time to rest. A week after graduation, Lisa began looking for work. She sent her resume to local hospitals, clinics, and even a couple of schools, but the first response was not from the medical center, but from Stratton Industries, a large factory in a nearby town that made car parts. They needed a nurse on staff to monitor the health of workers, treat cuts, issue sick leave, and conduct basic examinations. The salary was higher than hospital pay for a newbie, plus insurance for the whole family, an offer he couldn't refuse. The interview took place in mid-July. Lisa put on her only decent blouse, which had to be ironed twice because of a stain from baby puree, and went to the factory, leaving Alex with the children. When she returned, her eyes sparkled. "They took me," she said as soon as she crossed the threshold. "I start in 2 weeks." "Alex, who at that moment was trying to persuade Emma to eat a spoonful of applesauce instead of spreading it on the table, froze. Seriously? Yes, she nodded, throwing her purse onto the sofa. 30,000 a year plus bonuses, and insurance covers us all. He stood up, wiped his hands on his jeans, and hugged her, not paying attention to the fact that Emma immediately took the opportunity to knock over the bowl. This is it, lies. This is our chance. Lisa's job at Stratton Industries began with turmoil. Her first day was Monday, and she left home at 6:30 a.m., leaving Alex with 2 kids and a to-do list. Feed Nathan, take Emma to Debbie, don't forget the bottles. The factory was 40 minutes away, and Lisa returned home at 6 in the evening, tired but full of stories. There was a guy there who cut his hand on a machine today, she said over dinner, while Alex was heating up the leftover lasagna. The blood is gushing, and he stands and laughs, saying that this is no worse than when his dog bit him. I had to stitch it up right at the first aid station. Sounds like a fun bunch, Alex chuckled, placing the plate in front of her. Yet they're all a little crazy there, she agreed, cutting off a piece for Emma, who was sitting in her high chair with her hands reaching for the food. But they pay on time, and the boss said that in 6 months they might give me a promotion if I can handle it. Alex nodded, chewing a piece. The money from her work became a salvation. For the first time in 3 years, they could not count every dollar until the end of the month. They even started saving a little, $5,100 each. But this was the first step towards something more. A new pickup truck, roof repairs, maybe even a vacation that they had dreamed of since school. Alex himself also did not stand still. Ray promoted him to senior mechanic in the shop, which meant a $2 per hour increase and more responsibility. Now he not only fixed cars, but also taught newbies like 17-year-old Tom, who always confused spark plugs with filters. It was tiring, but it gave him the feeling that he was moving forward. One evening in late October, they sat on the porch of their house, watching Emma chase fallen leaves in the yard. Nathan slept in the stroller next to him, wrapped in a blanket, and Lisa held a mug of hot tea, warming her hands. The sky was clear, the stars appeared one after another. You know, today I spoke with the head of the first aid post, Lisa began, looking into the distance. He said Stratton could pay for the course if I wanted to become a paramedic. This is 2 more years of study, but then the salary will double. Alex turned to her, raising an eyebrow. Do you want to study again? With 2 children? Not right now, she laughed. But in a year or 2, maybe. This is the future, Alex. For us, for them, she nodded at Emma, who was now trying to stuff the leaf into her mouth. He thought about it. Lisa was always like this. She looked further than he could imagine. He is used to living in the moment, fixing the car, paying the bill, buying diapers. And she made plans, seeing their family not in this old house with a leaking roof, but somewhere better. If that's what you want, I'm with you, he finally said. Maybe I'll come up with something too. Ray once talked about his workshop that he wanted to expand it. If I invest, maybe I'll become a co-owner. Lisa looked at him in surprise. Are you serious? Why not? I'm not the same kid who fixed cars for change. I have experience, he shrugged, but there was confidence in his voice. She smiled, put the mug down, and moved closer, laying her head on his shoulder. We're growing, right? Yeah, he replied, hugging her. Slowly, but we are growing. Life went on as usual. Lisa settled into the job, becoming a favorite among the workers for her sharp tongue and ability to keep them in line. Alex began saving for the expansion of the workshop, saving every extra dollar. Emma learned to speak in long sentences, and Nathan began to crawl, adding chaos to their already noisy home. There were difficulties. The electric bill one day came in $200 more because of an old boiler, and they had to eat pasta for a week to pay it. Nathan caught a cold, and Lisa sat with him half the night while Alex ran to the pharmacy for syrup. But there were also moments of triumph. Lisa's first check from Stratton Industries, which they hung on the refrigerator as a reminder, and the day Alex fixed the boiler himself, saving $100. Every day, the hope for the best became more tangible. They were no longer just surviving, they were building something real. And although the road ahead was long, and the old house on Maple Street still creaked at night, Alex and Lisa knew that they could handle it. Together. As the years passed, the little house on Maple Street, once filled with children's laughter, screams, and the pitter-patter of little feet, gradually grew quiet. Emma and Nathan, who just recently left applesauce stains on the sofa and drew with felt tip pens on the walls, have grown up. By June of that year, both had graduated from school, Emma with honors, and Nathan with a solid B and a reputation as a guy who could always make the class laugh. Their graduation marked a turning point for the Carter family, marking the end of an era and the beginning of something new. Emma, now a tall 18-year-old with long brown hair and Lisa's sharp eyes, was accepted to Indiana University in Bloomington as a biology major. Her dream was to become a veterinarian, and from the age of 15 she worked part-time at a local clinic, cleaning cages and helping with vaccinations. Nathan, broad-shouldered and loud like his father in his youth, chose a different path. He enrolled in an auto mechanic college in Indianapolis, deciding to follow in Alex's footsteps, but with the ambition of opening his own shop. Both left home at the end of August, leaving behind empty rooms and silence to which Alex and Lisa were not yet accustomed. The graduation took place in the stuffy Riverton High School gym, which smelled of sweat and cheap perfume. Lisa sat in the front row, squeezing Alex's hand as Emma, in a black robe, walked up to the stage to receive her diploma. Her speech, short but confident, forced Lisa to wipe away her tears with a handkerchief which she had prudently grabbed. "Thank you to my parents," Emma said, looking into the audience. "They taught me that you can achieve anything if you don't give up." Alex squeezed Lisa's hand a little tighter, feeling a lump in his throat. When it was Nathan's turn, he walked across the stage with a wide smile, winked at friends in the crowd, and almost dropped his diploma when he tripped over a cable. The hall burst into laughter, and Lisa rolled her eyes, whispering to Alex, "This is definitely your son." After the ceremony, they held a small celebration at home. Debbie, already gray but still cheerful, brought her signature meatloaf, and Ray brought a case of beer and a box of tools as a gift for Nathan. The yard was decorated with the garlands that Lisa and Emma had hung the day before, and the old table, finally bought at a crossroads years ago, was laden with food: French fries, chicken wings, cherry pie. Emma was chatting with her friends, Nathan was bragging about his college plans to Uncle Ray, and Alex and Lisa were standing on the porch, watching the commotion. "They've grown up," Lisa said quietly, leaning against his shoulder. "Yeah," he nodded, sipping his beer. "Too fast." Moving children was a challenge. Emma left first. They loaded her things: a suitcase, boxes of books, a cage containing her hamster named Darwin, into Alex's old pickup, which was still creaking but holding together. The drive to Bloomington took 2 hours, and Lisa spent the entire trip giving Emma advice. "Remember to eat vegetables, call home at least once a week, don't spend all your money on coffee." Emma rolled her eyes, but smiled. As they carried her things into the dorm, a cramped room with 2 beds and a view of the parking lot, Lisa suddenly fell silent, watching Emma unpack her backpack. Alex noticed her swallow and put his hand on her shoulder. "She can handle it," he whispered. "I know," Lisa answered, but her voice trembled. They hugged Emma goodbye, and she hugged them tightly before walking away, waving out the window as the pickup pulled away. Nathan left a week later. His belongings were smaller: a couple of bags, a toolbox, and a guitar, which he had been strumming since he was 14 years old. Indianapolis was closer, but the farewell was louder. He clapped Alex on the back, promising not to screw it up, and kissed Lisa on the cheek, calling her the best mom in the world. As the pickup truck disappeared around the corner, Lisa stood on the porch with her arms crossed and watched it go until Alex called her inside. The house is empty. Emma's bedroom, where there were once animal posters and textbooks, now stood bare with a clean bed. Nathan's room, a perpetual mess of wires, old sneakers, and car magazines, was also tidy, although the smell of gasoline seemed to be ingrained in the walls. Alex and Lisa wandered around the house as if they had lost something important, but could not understand what it was. The first morning without children was the strangest. Alex woke up at 7 out of habit, expecting to hear Emma's stomping in the kitchen or Nathan's scream demanding breakfast. But it was quiet, only the clock was ticking and the refrigerator was humming. He went downstairs, made coffee, and sat down at the table opposite Lisa, who was leafing through the newspaper. "So, are we officially old people now?" he joked, pushing the mug towards her. She snorted without looking up from the page. "Speak for yourself. I'm only 43. "You look 25, he winked, and she finally smiled, putting down the newspaper. "What are we going to do with this silence?" she asked, looking around the kitchen. "I've already forgotten what it's like to not have to yell at someone to remove their plate." "Should we get a dog?" Alex suggested, and Lisa laughed so loudly that the coffee almost spilled. "Only after you learn to put your socks away," she retorted. They started to get used to it. Lisa still worked at Stratton Industries, but now she was the head nurse, running a small infirmary and training new recruits. Her salary has increased, and she even took the paramedic course she dreamed of years ago, which gave her more freedom and respect at work. Alex became a co-owner of Ray's workshop after investing his savings into expanding it. Now there were 2 new lifts, more customers, and he was even thinking about hiring another mechanic. Without children, their routine has changed. In the morning, they drank coffee together, leisurely discussing news or plans for the weekend. In the evenings, Lisa read books, mostly medical books, but sometimes novels she borrowed from the library, and Alex tinkered with an old engine in the garage, just to keep his hands busy. They started going out more often. Dinner at a diner, walks along the river, even a trip to a movie theater in a nearby town that was showing old movies. One Saturday in early October, they were sitting on the sofa with a bottle of wine, a rare pleasure that had previously been put aside for the children's needs. The rain was falling outside, pattering on the roof, and a fire was crackling in the fireplace that Alex had fixed last winter. "You know, I thought it would be worse," Lisa said, pulling her knees to her chest and looking at the flames. "When the children left, I was afraid that we would lose us." Alex turned to her, placing his glass on the table. "But it seems to me that we are just getting started. We now have time for the 2 of us." She looked at him, and a spark flashed in her eyes, the same one that she had at 18 when they were sitting on the tailgate of his pickup truck near the quarry. "You're right," she said quietly. "It's like a new chapter." He leaned down and kissed her, slowly, deliberately, as if they truly had all the time in the world. The rain was getting heavier, but it was warm inside, and for the first time in a long time, they felt like they could just be. No rush, no shouting, no to-do list. Life slowed down, but did not stop. Emma called on Sundays, talking about lectures and her roommate who snored like a tractor. Nathan sent photos from college. Sometimes he was under a car, sometimes with friends having a beer, with the caption, "Don't worry, I'm alive." Lisa hung their letters and pictures on the refrigerator next to that first check from Stratton Industries, which was still held on by a magnet. She and Alex began planning to renovate the house, paint the walls, replace the old linoleum in the kitchen, maybe even create the veranda that Lisa had been dreaming of since moving. These were small steps, but they gave a sense of purpose. They also talked about a trip, not a big one like Hawaii, but a simple one, to the mountains of Tennessee to look at the autumn leaves and sit around the fire. The silence was no longer frightening. She became their ally, promising peace after turbulent years. Alex and Lisa, now alone, stood on the threshold of something new, not as noisy as before, but just as real. And although changes awaited them ahead, they knew that together they could cope with anything. The autumn of the year brought not only golden leaves and cool winds to Riverton, but also disturbing rumors. Stratton Industries, the factory that had become Lisa's second home for the past 18 years, was on the verge of collapse. The auto industry was changing. Electric vehicles were replacing older engines, and orders for the parts for which the company was famous were falling by the month. By November, talk of layoffs was spreading throughout the workshops, and in the smoking rooms workers were whispering about a possible closure. For Lisa, now no longer just a nurse, but the head of the medical department, this became a personal challenge. She saw how the factory had given their family stability and couldn't let it all fall apart. It all started with a meeting in mid-November. Lisa sat in a cramped meeting room, surrounded by shop supervisors and managers in wrinkled suits. The CEO, Mark Haley, a gray-haired man with tired eyes, threw a stack of papers on the table and said bluntly, "If we don't find a way to stay afloat by the end of the year, Stratton will close. Bankruptcy is a matter of months." Silence hung in the room like smoke from cheap cigarettes. Lisa looked at her hands folded on the table and felt something boiling inside, not fear, but determination. She looked up and asked, "What about grants? The state subsidizes companies that switch to green technologies. We could retool some of the production." Haley frowned but nodded. "Prove it will work, Lisa. You have a week to come up with a plan. If it is convincing, I will take it to the council." This was her chance, not just to save her job, but to prove that she can be more than just a paramedic with bandages and a thermometer. She returned home late that evening with a bag full of documents and her eyes sparkling with ideas. Alex met her at the door with a mug of tea, a habit that had developed over the years of their marriage. He noticed her tense face as soon as she took off her coat. "Long day?" he asked, holding out the mug. "You have no idea," she replied, sitting down at the kitchen table. "Stratton is sinking, and I just volunteered to pull him out." Alex leaned against the countertop with his arms crossed. "Pull it out? You're not an engineer." "Not an engineer," she agreed, opening her laptop. "But I know how grants work. If we transfer part of the lines to the production of batteries for electric vehicles, we can receive subsidies. That's millions of dollars, Alex. This could save us all." He whistled, looking at her with a mixture of surprise and pride. "Are you serious about this?" "Yeah," she nodded, already leafing through old company reports. "Either I do this, or in 6 months, we will all be on the street." Alex came up behind her, put his hands on her shoulders, and squeezed her lightly. "Then do it, and I'll take care of dinner and cover you at home." She smiled without looking up from the screen. "You're the best." The following weeks turned into a marathon. Lisa got up at 5 in the morning, made coffee, and sat down at the table while the house was still asleep. She studied the laws on subsidies, rummaged through the Stratton archives, wrote down figures, how much it would cost to re-equip a workshop, how many workers could be saved, what the deadlines would be. During the day, she wandered around the factory, collecting data from engineers and convincing them to believe in her idea. Evenings and often nights were spent preparing presentations, graphs, tables, forecasts. Alex saw how she gave it all. She returned home after midnight with red eyes and an empty thermal mug, fell on the sofa, and fell asleep in her clothes. He covered her with a blanket, turned off the light, and went to bed alone, knowing that in the morning she would be at her laptop again. At home, he took charge of everything: cooking, fixing a leaky faucet, even vacuuming things that were previously shared equally between them. "You look like a zombie," he told her one day at breakfast, pushing a plate of scrambled eggs towards her. It was Sunday, but Lisa was already sitting with papers. "I feel the same way," she replied, rubbing her temples. "But I'm almost finished. Tomorrow I'll show Haley the draft." "And what will he say?" "I hope I'm a genius," she chuckled, but there was tension in her voice. "Or he'll fire me for wasting his time." Alex shook his head. "He won't fire you. You're too good." She looked at him, and for a second her face softened. "Thank you for keeping me on my toes." The presentation took place in early December. Lisa stood in front of the board of directors in her best suit, a gray jacket, and skirt that she bought for a promotion 5 years ago. Her voice trembled for the first 5 minutes, but then she settled into a rhythm, showing slides of numbers and graphs. She explained how the $10 million subsidy would cover the refurbishment of 2 workshops, how it would save 300 jobs, and how Stratton could enter the electric vehicle market profitably in 3 years. Haley listened in silence, tapping his pen on the table. When she finished, there was silence in the room. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and said, "It's risky, but if we don't do anything, we'll definitely drown. Let's try it, Lisa. You are in charge of the project." She barely suppressed a smile as she nodded. "Thank you, sir." When she left the office, her legs were shaking, but triumph was raging inside. In the evening, she told Alex everything over a bottle of cheap wine, which they opened in honor of the event. "I did it," she said, raising her glass. "Now the hard part begins." "You can handle it," he replied, clinking glasses with her. "As always." The project was launched in January. Lisa became his heart and brain. She coordinated engineers, met with state representatives, and signed contracts for new equipment. Her working day began at 7 in the morning and ended after midnight. She learned to understand technical drawings, negotiate with suppliers, and even mastered basic Chinese phrases to communicate with one of the contractors. She was hardly seen at home. Alex got used to her late returns, leaving dinner in the microwave with a note, "Eat, otherwise it will blow away." Sometimes she called him from the factory just to hear his voice. "How are you there?" he asked one day when she called at 11 o'clock at night. "Alive," she answered, rustling papers. "I just agreed on a discount on batteries. This will save us $500,000. "You're a monster," he laughed. "When are you going home?" "In 2 hours. Don't wait, go to bed." But he waited, always. The tension grew. In February, one of the suppliers missed the deadline, and Lisa screamed on the phone half the night until she got a replacement. In March, engineers found an error in the drawings, and she had to rewrite part of her grant application over a weekend. She lost weight, there were shadows under her eyes, but she couldn't stop. Too much depended on her project. Alex tried to support her. He came to her factory with coffee and sandwiches when she forgot to eat. One day, in early April, he found her sleeping at the table in the infirmary, surrounded by papers. He woke her up by handing her a thermos of soup. "You'll kill yourself," he said, watching her eat. "I won't kill you," she answered, but her voice was weak. "We're already halfway there. Another 3 months and the workshop will be operational. Will you survive these 3 months?" She looked at him, and fatigue flashed in her eyes, but was immediately replaced by stubbornness. "I will survive. For our sake." By May, the project began to take shape. The first workshop was re-equipped, and new machines began to hum, producing battery prototypes. Workers who feared being fired now looked at Lisa with gratitude, and Haley publicly called her the savior of Stratton. The grant passed final approval, and the money started flowing in. One evening, Lisa returned home earlier than usual at 9. Alex was sitting in the living room, watching an old racing movie, and almost jumped when he saw her. "Are you alive?" he joked, standing up. "More than," she replied, throwing her bag on the floor. "We launched the line. Everything works." He hugged her, feeling her relax in his arms. "You did it, Lies." "We did," she corrected, burying her head in his shoulder. "Without you, I would have broken." They stood there for a long time, listening to the silence of the house and the hum of the TV. The project was not yet completed, but the worst was behind us. For the first time in months, Lisa could breathe deeply, and Alex knew that their new chapter, which began with an empty house, was now filled with something more. June in Riverton was hot, with a heavy, humid air that stuck to the skin and made everyone move more slowly. Lisa's project at Stratton Industries was finally gaining momentum. The first workshop was working at full capacity, the second was preparing to launch, and the tension of the last months began to subside. Lisa began to be at home more often, although she still brought stacks of papers and a laptop with her to finalize the details. Alex, accustomed to her late returns, rejoiced at these changes. Their life seemed to be moving into a calm direction. Their children were calling from college. The workshop was bringing in a stable income, and he and Lisa even began planning that trip to Tennessee that they had dreamed of back in the fall. But on one of these stuffy evenings, everything changed. Alex decided to clean out the garage, an old hobby that he abandoned due to his busy schedule. Lisa was at the factory, promising to be back by 8, and he wanted to free the evening so they could watch a movie or just sit on the porch with a beer. He was sorting through boxes of tools, throwing away rusty bolts and old rags, when he came across her bag. It wasn't the one she usually wore to work, black, shabby, with a torn zipper, which she had been meaning to throw away for a long time. The bag was lying in the corner, next to the paint cans, and he decided to look inside to see if it was worth throwing away. There wasn't much inside: a couple of pens, a crumpled notebook, an empty package of chewing gum. But in his side pocket, his fingers felt something hard, a small plastic box. He pulled it out, expecting to see some headache medicine or something from her paramedic work arsenal. Instead, the package said, "Plan B, morning pill." Alex froze. His brain refused to process what he saw. He turned the box over, as if hoping it was a mistake. But no, the production date was fresh. The package had been opened. One of the 2 tablets was missing. His heart began to pound, and his head began to make a noise like an overheated engine. Vasectomy. He made it after Nathan was born. Lisa then insisted 2 children was enough, and they both wanted to put an end to this issue. The operation went without complications. The doctor confirmed that everything was successful, and since then they have lived without regard for such things. So where did this pill come from? And why? He put the package in his jeans pocket, threw the bag back into the corner, and went into the house, feeling his legs become weak. In the kitchen, he poured a glass of water and drank it in one gulp, but the lump in his throat did not disappear. Thoughts were spinning, each worse than the other. Lisa could not get pregnant from him. It was impossible. So, what? Treason? Lie? Or does he not understand something? Lisa returned at 8:15, as promised. She entered with a tired smile, throwing her bag on the sofa and taking off her light jacket. Alex stood at the sink, washing dishes from dinner, an activity he had started to keep his hands busy and keep him from going crazy. "Hi," she said, coming closer. "Are you okay? You look like you took the car apart with your bare hands." He turned off the water, dried his hands with a towel, and turned to her. His face was calm, but inside he was seething. "Found something in the garage," he said evenly, taking the package out of his pocket and placing it on the table between them. Lisa looked at her, and her smile slowly faded. She frowned, then looked up at him. "What is this?" "You tell me," he replied, crossing his arms. "Because I don't understand why you need this, lies. After my vasectomy." She fell silent, her eyes widened, but not from fear, from surprise. Then she suddenly snorted, covering her mouth with her hand, and this only infuriated him more. "Are you laughing?" he asked sharply, stepping forward. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No, no, wait," she said, raising her hands as if to stop him. "Alex, it's not what you think. Lord, give me a second." He waited, clenching his jaw so that his teeth creaked. Lisa took a deep breath, lowered her hands, and looked him straight in the eyes. "It's not mine," she said firmly. "Well, that is mine, but not for me. This is for Kelly." Alex blinked. Kelly was her colleague at the factory, a young nurse whom Lisa had taken under her wing a couple of years ago. "What?" "Kelly is in trouble," Lisa began, sitting down at the table and rubbing her forehead. "A month ago, she broke up with her boyfriend, and then she found out that well, set her up. She panicked and came to see me at the first aid station in tears. She didn't have the money to buy it herself, and I couldn't just watch her drown. I went to the pharmacy, bought pills, and gave them to her. She took one, and I put the package in an old bag and forgot about it." Alex was silent, digesting her words. His mind still clung to doubts, but Lisa's voice was sincere, and the story was too specific to be made up on the fly. "Did you buy her Plan B?" he asked, still frowning. "Yes," she nodded. "I know what it's like to be young, scared, and with no way out. I couldn't refuse her." He exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in his shoulders release, but not completely. "Why didn't you tell me?" Lisa shrugged. I didn't want to burden you. You already have a workshop, bills, and then there are my work dramas. And honestly, I forgot about this bag. It's been lying around in the garage since I threw it there. Alex looked at her, trying to figure out if he believed her. He had known Lisa almost all his life, her honesty, her habit of helping others, even when it made her own life difficult. The story with Kelly sounded plausible, but a shadow of doubt still stirred somewhere inside. You could have at least mentioned it, he finally said, sitting down opposite her. I almost had a heart attack, thinking, well, you know what I thought. Her face softened, and she reached her hand across the table, touching his fingers. Sorry, I didn't want you to worry like that. It's just a stupid situation, and I didn't handle it well. He nodded, squeezing her hand in return, but there was still wariness in his eyes. Just, no more surprises, okay? You and I are a team. I promise, she said quietly. No secrets. The next few days were strange. Alex tried to put this incident out of his mind, but every time Lisa was late at work or picked up the phone to answer a call, something tightened in his chest. He hated this feeling, the uncertainty that was eroding the trust they had built over 25 years of marriage. Lisa, for her part, tried to be open. She talked about every day, even about little things like arguments with engineers or coffee spilled on a report. She felt his tension and tried to relieve it. One evening, a week after that scene in the kitchen, she came home with a bag from the diner, burgers and fries, an old ritual from when the kids were little. Alex was tinkering in the garage, fixing an old carburetor for a client, and she called him into the house. Break, she said, placing the bag on the table. Eat before it gets cold. He wiped his hands with a rag and sat down, watching her lay out the food. The silence between them was not heavy, but noticeable. I spoke to Kelly today, she began, without looking at him. Told her that you found that package. She almost died of shame and asked me to tell you that she was sorry. Alex chuckled, taking a bite of his burger. She has nothing to apologize for. This is your bag. Lisa smiled at the corner of her lips. Yeah, it's my fault, but she still feels guilty. She said she owed you a beer. Let him send a box, he muttered, and they both laughed sincerely for the first time in a week. Laughter melted some of the ice. They ate, chatting about little things, about a new client in the workshop, about how Nathan sent a photo of his first repaired car, about the weather, which promised rain. But when dinner was over, Alex still asked, would you tell me if something was wrong? Is it true? Lisa looked into his eyes. Her face became serious. Yes, Alex. I would say, you are my man, always was. He nodded, feeling the last vestiges of doubt dissolve. Maybe it was his paranoia, maybe it was the fatigue of recent years, but he decided to believe. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The summer dragged on slowly, like oil dripping from a hot engine. After that night with burgers and the conversation with Lisa, Alex tried to convince himself that everything was fine. Her explanation about Kelly was logical, her look was sincere, and their lives seemed to be back on track. But something inside him continued to hum, like a loose bolt in an engine that you hear but can't find. He didn't want to bring up the subject again, he didn't want to seem paranoid or ruin the fragile peace they had restored. Instead, he decided to figure it out himself. Quietly, unnoticeably, without unnecessary words. The first step came to his mind by chance. On Saturday morning, while Lisa slept after another long week at the factory, Alex sat in the kitchen with coffee and looked at her bag, a new leather one, which she bought after the old one was at the center of their argument. He remembered how often she left her phone charging next to the sink, and he wondered, what if there was something there that she hadn't told? Not correspondence with her lover, he did not even want to admit this thought, but some kind of hint, a piece of truth that she hid so as not to disturb him. He stood up, quietly walked over to her phone and took it in his hands. The screen was locked, but he knew the password, 0618, their wedding day. Lisa never changed him, and this always seemed to him a sign of trust. Fingers froze over the buttons. If he looks, it will be a turning point, a step beyond a line he has never crossed before. But anxiety, that damn itching in his chest, pushed him forward. He entered the code. The screen lit up. Messages, calls, calendar, everything is as usual. He scrolled through the chat with Kelly, a couple of work questions, a joke about coffee in the infirmary, nothing suspicious. In the correspondence with Emma, a reminder of the call on Sunday. In the chat with Nathan, his photo from college and her answer, "I'm proud of you, little one." Nothing. He was about to put the phone back when he noticed the bank app, the one Lisa used for their joint account. Maybe there's something there, buying another pack of pills, or something worse. He opened the application. The last transactions were familiar: groceries, gasoline, electricity bill. But a month ago, on a day that coincided with her story about Kelly, there was a $49 purchase at the pharmacy. It could be anything: aspirin, bandages, or even vitamins, but the amount fits the cost of Plan B. Alex exhaled. This confirmed her words, but for some reason did not reassure her. He closed the phone and returned it to its place, feeling both guilty and even more confused. He didn't stop. The next day, when Lisa mentioned that she would be late at the factory due to a meeting with suppliers, Alex decided to test her words. He knew her schedule better than his own and understood that such meetings usually ended by 6. At 6:30 a.m., he got into a pickup truck and drove to Stratton Industries, parking across the street from the main entrance. Her car, an old blue Hyundai they had bought 5 years ago, was parked in the parking lot. He sat looking at the gate and waited. At 7:15 she left, alone, with a bag over her shoulder, wearily rubbing her neck. No men, no secret meetings, just Lisa walking to the car. She started the engine and drove away, and Alex remained sitting there, feeling like an idiot. He turned on the radio to drown out his thoughts and took a different route home to avoid running into her in the driveway. But doubts did not disappear. They clung to little things: her occasional glance at her phone when she thought he wasn't looking, the way she sometimes fell silent in the middle of a conversation, as if she was thinking about something, even her fatigue, which could be attributed to work, but which seemed too deep to him. He began to notice things he hadn't seen before or didn't want to see. For example, how she once returned home with the smell of cigarette smoke in her hair, although she herself had not smoked for 20 years. She said that she was in the smoking room with the workers, discussing the project, and he nodded, but something stabbed inside. On Friday, he took it one step further. While Lisa was in the shower, he rummaged through her work bag, not the old one, but the new one that she wore every day. There were the usual things: keys, a wallet, a couple of pens, a notebook with notes about the project. But in his side pocket, he found a folded piece of paper, a receipt from a cafe in a nearby town, dated last week. $32 for coffee and sandwiches for two. She didn't mention any meetings that day, only that she was at the factory late. He put the receipt back, his heart pounding. It could be anything: lunch with a colleague, with Kelly, with one of the engineers. But why didn't she tell me? He stood at the window, looking out onto the dark courtyard, and tried to put together the pieces of a puzzle that perhaps existed only in his head. When Lisa came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, she noticed his gaze. "Why are you so gloomy?" she asked, drying her hair. "Just tired," he lied, turning to the sink. It was a long day. "Come here," she said, coming up and hugging him from behind. Her hands were warm, and she smelled of lavender shampoo. "Let's not go anywhere tomorrow. Let's just stay at home like before." He nodded, but did not relax. Her touch, so familiar, now seemed foreign. He wanted to believe her, wanted to go back to what it was before that damned package, but he couldn't. The doubts are too deep-rooted. That night he hardly slept. He lay looking at the ceiling and listened to her breathing. He decided he would keep digging, not to find dirt, but to make sure it wasn't there. The next day, he planned to talk to Kelly, not directly, but through mutual friends at the factory, to verify her story. Maybe even go to that cafe and ask if they remember Lisa with someone else. Alex didn't want to suspect his wife. He loved her more than he could express in words. But this anxiety, This quiet hum in his chest did not give him peace. He had to know the truth, even if it was. Every day he found new reasons for suspicion. Either Lisa took too long to answer the call, or her voice seemed a little more tense than usual. The receipt from the cafe was the last straw he could no longer sit idly by. When Lisa announced Friday morning that she was going to Philadelphia for a 2-day green technology conference associated with the Stratton project, Alex nodded, wished her luck, and even helped her pack her suitcase. But inside he already knew. He would go after her. She left at noon, promising to call in the evening. Alex waited until her Hyundai disappeared around the bend, and then threw a change of clothes, the keys to the pickup truck, and an old baseball cap into his backpack, which he pulled over his eyes to remain unnoticed. He told Ray that he was taking a day off for family reasons, and an hour later he was driving along the highway towards Philadelphia, which was 3 hours away. A plan was spinning in my head. Find the hotel where Lisa was staying and just observe. He didn't want to rush in with accusations, just to make sure his worries were unfounded. Lisa mentioned that the conference was being held downtown at the Marriott Hotel, a large glass building overlooking the Delaware River. Alex parked the pickup 2 blocks away in a convenience store parking lot and started walking. It was about 5 in the evening, the sun was still burning, and the streets were teeming with people, tourists, businessmen, street vendors. He walked into the hotel lobby, keeping his distance, and sat down in a chair by the window, pretending to leaf through a magazine. His plan was simple: wait for Lisa, see her return from the conference, and go home with a clear conscience. An hour later, he noticed her. She stepped out of the elevator in a formal black dress and low-heeled shoes, with a bag over her shoulder and a conference badge on her chest. Alex tensed, but didn't see anything suspicious. She looked like a delegate, tired after a day of reports. Lisa crossed the lobby and headed to the hotel restaurant, where other participants were already gathering. Men in suits, women with tablets, all with glasses of wine or beer in their hands. He relaxed, thinking it was just a work dinner, and was about to leave when he saw him. A man entered the restaurant through a side door, tall, with short gray hair and a confident gait. He was wearing a dark blue suit, without a tie, and he immediately attracted the attention of not only Alex, but also the other guests. Lisa raised her head, noticed him, and smiled not just politely, but warmly, as if she had known him for a long time. They exchanged a few words, and he sat down opposite her at a table by the window. Alex felt the blood rush to his face. He knew this man. Richard Bennett is a senator from Pennsylvania known for his green economy speeches and high-profile campaigns. His face appeared on the news, on billboards, even in the newspapers that Lisa sometimes brought home. What is he doing here, having dinner with his wife? Alex moved closer to the restaurant, taking a table in the corner of the bar where he could see them through the glass partition. He ordered a beer so as not to stand out and watched. Lisa and Bennett were talking animatedly. She was showing him something on her phone. He nodded, laughed, and sometimes touched her hand when he leaned closer. It didn't feel like a business meeting, too many smiles, too much personal. The waiter brought them food, steak for him, salad for her, and they continued talking, oblivious to the other guests. Alex squeezed the bottle until his knuckles turned white. His mind raced between explanations. Maybe this was part of the project. Bennett supported green initiatives, and Stratton could be in his area of interest. But why then didn't Lisa mention him even once? And why do they look like they've known each other for years? Dinner lasted about an hour. When they finished, Bennett paid Alex, saw him casually toss the credit card on the table, and they stood up. Lisa took the bag, he held the door for her, and they headed to the elevators. Alex threw down the money for the beer and followed, keeping his distance. His heart was pounding like a hammer on an anvil. They entered the elevator together. The doors closed, and Alex managed to see Bennett press the button the 4th floor. He waited for the next elevator, went up to the same floor, and went out into a long corridor with soft carpet and dim lights. He didn't know what to look for, but he walked forward until he heard her voice, quiet, with a slight laugh, coming from around the corner. Alex pressed himself against the wall and looked out. Lisa stood at the door of room 412, Bennett nearby, holding the key card. She said something, he smiled and opened the door. They walked inside, and the door slammed behind them. The world has collapsed. Alex stood looking at the closed door and felt his legs give way. He wanted to rush in, knock down the door, demand answers, but something stopped him, maybe the fear of seeing something he couldn't forget, or the remnants of hope that it still wasn't what it seemed. He clenched his fists, turned around, and walked towards the stairs, going down with quick steps so as not to fall. On the street, he got into a pickup truck, started the engine, and just sat there, staring into space. His mind was blank, but his body was shaking with adrenaline. Lisa with another man, in a hotel room. After dinner, it looked like a date. After all her words about trust, that they are a team. He remembered her smile at the table, her hand lying too close to Bennett's, and he felt sick. He didn't go home right away. Instead, he found a bar a couple of blocks from the hotel, a dark, smoky place with a sticky floor and an old jukebox in the corner. He ordered a whiskey, then another, and sat there looking into the glass until the bartender asked if he was okay. Yes, Alex lied, throwing the money on the counter. But he wasn't okay. He was crushed. He arrived home only at midnight. Lisa had to stay in Philadelphia until Sunday, so the house greeted him with silence. He threw the keys on the table, fell onto the sofa, and stared at the ceiling. What did he see? Treason, or something operational that he misunderstood. Bennett was a politician, a powerful man. Maybe it was a project meeting that just seemed weird. But why then the number? Why not a lobby or conference room? He took out his phone and typed Richard Bennett into the search engine. Articles, photos, videos, everything about his career, family, public life. Married, 2 adult children, clean reputation, apart from minor lobbying scandals. Nothing about novels, nothing about Lisa. But this didn't prove anything. Alex turned off the phone and closed his eyes. He didn't know what to do next. Talk to her, admit that you were watching, or continue to remain silent, collect evidence until he is sure. His mind screamed that he had to believe her 25 years together couldn't be a lie. But the heart, broken by what he saw, whispered something else. That night, he fell asleep on the sofa, clutching an empty glass in his hand. The morning brought no answers, only a headache and a firm decision. He would not stop until he found out the truth, whatever it is. The morning of Saturday, June 29th, dawned gray and heavy, as if the sky above Riverton knew what was happening in the house on Maple Street. Alex woke up on the couch with an aching back and the bitter taste of whiskey in his mouth. The image of Lisa entering the room with Richard Bennett was still in front of her eyes, burning out the last vestiges of hope. He lay looking at the ceiling and felt something inside breaking, not sharply, but slowly, with a quiet crack, like old wood under a load. He could no longer wait for her return, could not bear the conversation, the accusations, her possible lies, or, worse, the truth. He needed to leave. The decision came on its own, without much thought. He got up, went into the bedroom, and opened the closet. His clothes, jeans, t-shirts, old jackets hung next to her dresses and blouses, which he helped choose. He pulled out a backpack, the same one he took to Philadelphia, and began to put things away. Several pairs of socks, underwear, a couple of sweaters, a toothbrush. Nothing extra. From a dresser drawer, he took out an old tin box where he kept cash, about $800, put aside for a rainy day. This day has come. He moved quickly but quietly, as if he was afraid to wake up the house, which was already empty. In the garage, he collected tools, wrenches, screwdrivers, a hammer, everything that could be useful for the job. His pickup truck, a faithful companion for nearly 20 years, sat in the driveway, ready to hit the road. Alex glanced at their house, the peeling paint, the porch they painted with the children, the flowers in the pots that Lisa watered every morning. This was their life, their story, and now it's just a shell. He returned to the kitchen and grabbed a notepad from the refrigerator and a pen. The words didn't come, but he forced himself to write. High school. I can't do it anymore. I need time. Don't look for me. Alex. He didn't explain, didn't mention Philadelphia, Bennett his suspicions. Let him think what he wants, he was not ready for her version of the truth. The note lay on the table, crushed by the salt shaker, and he left, closing the door behind him. The key remained in the lock, it will never come back. Alex got into the pickup truck, started the engine, and drove onto the highway without looking back. He decided where to go at night, half delirious from whiskey and pain. West Virginia. There, in a small town called Huntington, he had an old auto repair shop acquaintance, Jack, who one day offered him a job. Jack left Riverton a long time ago, opened his own business, and invited Alex to join if he ever decided to change his surroundings. It was just talk then, but now it has become a goal. Huntington was 6 hours away, far enough to disappear, but not so far that he would lose himself completely. The road stretched on endlessly. He turned on the radio, but the songs were annoying, and after an hour he turned it off, leaving only the hum of the engine and the rustle of tires. My thoughts were confused. Lisa, the children, the workshop, their life. He didn't tell Emma and Nathan. He didn't know how to explain. They wouldn't understand, and he himself didn't fully understand what he was doing. I just knew I couldn't stay. By noon, he crossed the Ohio state line, stopped at a gas station, bought coffee and a sandwich, which he ate in the car. The phone was in the glove compartment, turned off. He didn't want calls, messages, or questions. Not from Lisa, not from Ray, not from anyone. He removed himself from their world, at least for a while. Huntington greeted him with dusty streets and the smell of coal. The town was small, with low-slung houses and the Ohio River running along the outskirts. Alex found Jack's shop from memory. The Jack's Auto sign hung above the garage with peeling paint. He parked and walked inside, where compressors hummed and metal clanked. Jack, a heavy-set man with a beard and tattoos on his arms, looked up from the hood of the old Dodge. His eyes widened when he recognized Alex. "The hell, Carter? What are you doing here?" he asked, wiping his hands with a rag. "Hey, Jack," Alex said, trying to sound calm. "Is your offer still valid?" Jack narrowed his eyes, but nodded. "Always valid for a good mechanic. What happened? You look like you've been run over by a truck." "Long story," Alex snapped. "I need a place to stay and a job. No questions asked." Jack looked at him for a long moment, then shrugged. "Okay, whatever you say. I have a room above the garage, nothing luxurious, but livable. Start tomorrow if you want." "Thank you," Alex muttered, feeling some of the weight lift from his shoulders. He settled in the room above the workshop, a cramped closet with a sagging mattress, a small window, and an old TV that only received 2 channels. His things occupied one corner, his pickup truck was parked near the garage, and his phone remained turned off in his backpack. Jack gave him a job, fixing cars, from trucks to motorcycles, for cash without unnecessary paperwork. It was simple, familiar, and allowed me to turn my head off. The days merged into one. Alex would get up at dawn, go down to the garage, work until sunset, and then sit on the porch with a can of beer, looking at the river. He didn't call home, didn't check the news, didn't look for Lisa on the internet. He cut off all connections as if he had cut them off with a knife, leaving only a note on the table as the only trace. Sometimes he thought about Emma and Nathan. How would they react when they found out he was missing? But even this did not force him to turn on the phone. One evening, a week after his arrival, Jack sat next to him on the porch, holding out a second can of beer. "You don't have to say what happened," he began, taking a sip. "But you don't look like yourself, Alex. If I ran away from something, I hope it was worth it." Alex looked at the river, dark and calm. "I don't know if it was worth it," he answered quietly. "I just couldn't stay." Jack nodded without insisting. They sat in silence until the sun set and Alex realized that this silence was his new reality. He disappeared, leaving Lisa with her project, her secrets, and possibly her lies. He didn't know what would happen next. But now he had enough of this work, beer, and emptiness, which did not yet require answers. Summer in Huntington, West Virginia, flowed slowly like the Ohio River that wound its way through the town. After a week in the room above Jack's garage, Alex realized that he could not live in this cramped closet forever. The smell of gasoline and the hum of compressors below reminded him of the past that he was trying to escape, but did not allow him to take root in the present. He needed his own corner, albeit small, but separate. Jack, noticing his concern, said one day over beer, "There's a little house here by the river. It's cheap to rent. The owner is my sidekick and won't pester you with questions." Alex nodded, and a couple of days later they went to take a look. The house turned out to be an old one-story cottage with a rickety veranda and peeling blue paint. Inside there is a kitchen with shabby linoleum, a living room with a sagging sofa, and a bedroom where the bed could barely fit. The windows overlooked the river, and there was dampness in there, but it was better than a garage. Rent $400 per month, no deposit, cash. Alex agreed immediately, moved his meager belongings, and that same evening sat on the veranda with a can of beer, looking at the water. It wasn't his dream home, but it was his home. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he could breathe. Working in Jack's workshop became his anchor. He repaired everything he brought in: rusty farmers' pickups, local bikers' motorcycles, even an old tractor that rattled as if it was about to fall apart. Jack paid cash, $15 an hour, no taxes or extra paperwork. It was less than he made in Riverton as a co-owner of a workshop, but it was enough for food, rent, gas, and a little for a rainy day. He worked silently, concentrating on every bolt, every wire, and this helped drown out thoughts of the past. Clients didn't bother him. Locals were accustomed to strangers who showed up in Huntington in search of a quiet life, and Alex fit into this picture. A bearded mechanic in an old baseball cap, taciturn but reliable. Jack sometimes jokes, calling him the monk of the garage, but he didn't get into his soul. Alex was grateful for this silent understanding. His days found a rhythm. In the morning, coffee from a cheap coffee maker bought for $10 at a crossroads, then work until 6, dinner from canned food or fried potatoes, evening on the veranda. He bought an old radio at a flea market and listened to country music as the sun set over the river. It was a simple life, almost ascetic, but it gave him what he was looking for: peace. 2 weeks after moving, he decided to contact the children. Lisa, most likely, had already returned from Philadelphia, found the note, and raised the alarm. He didn't want Emma and Nathan to think he was gone forever, but he wasn't prepared for their questions either. He did not turn on the old phone. The risk of seeing her calls or messages was too great. Instead, he bought a cheap push-button device from a store for $20, took a prepaid SIM card, and sent text messages to the children from the new number. "Emma, this is Dad. I'm fine, just gone for a while. I live somewhere else and work. I'll call you when I can. Love you." To Nathan, "Son, it's me. Everything is fine. I've settled down in a new city. Don't worry, I'm in touch. Take care of yourself." The answers came almost immediately. Emma wrote, "Dad, what's going on? Mom is hysterical. She says you left. Where are you? Call me." Nathan was shorter. "Are you okay? Mom called and asked if I knew where you were. What happened?" Alex read their messages, feeling a pang of guilt, but did not respond immediately. He turned off the phone and put it in his desk drawer, deciding that he would keep the communication on his own terms. A couple of days later, he called them from the same number, choosing a time when he knew they would be free. The conversation with Emma was difficult. Her voice trembled with tears and anger. "Dad, you can't just disappear. Mom says she doesn't understand why you left. What are you hiding?" This is between me and her," he said quietly. "I need time to figure it out. I'm not leaving you, I just can't be there right now." "You're leaving us all," she said and hung up. Alex squeezed the phone but didn't call back. He knew that she would cool down, although not soon. It was easier with Nathan. "Dad, you ran away, just like in the movies," he said with a slight laugh, but there was anxiety in his voice. "Seriously, are you okay?" "Yes, son. I work and live by the river." "It's okay," Alex replied. "Just don't ask why yet. Agreed?" "Okay," Nathan agreed. "But let me know if anything happens. And It's hard for Mom, you know. I know, Alex muttered and ended the conversation. From then on, he called them once a week, briefly, avoiding details. They didn't press anymore, but he felt their confusion. He didn't say where exactly he lived, only mentioned small town and working with cars. It was a thin thread of connection that he held on to so as not to lose them completely, but remained in the shadows like a ghost of his past life. A month has passed. Alex settled into the house. He fixed the creaky step on the veranda, hung curtains that he found in a box from the previous tenant, even bought an old fishing rod for $5 and started fishing on weekends. The fish didn't bite well, but the process itself, sitting by the water, listening to the splash and not thinking about anything, was calming. He grew a beard, wore flannel shirts bought at a local thrift store, and looked like a man who had always lived here, not like a fugitive from another life. He developed a reputation in the shop. Customers praised him for his speed and precision, and Jack once tapped him on the shoulder and said, "It's like you were born with a key in your hands." Alex just nodded, but he felt warm inside for the first time in a long time. He felt like he was doing something worthwhile. Sometimes the past still caught up. At night, when the river roared outside the window, he had dreams. Lisa at the table in a restaurant with Bennett, her laughter, the door of the room closing. He would wake up in a cold sweat, clutching the sheet, and go to the kitchen to get water to drive away the images. During the day, he chased these thoughts away with work, but they did not disappear completely, they simply hid, like rust under paint. One evening in mid-August, he was sitting on the veranda with a fishing rod in his hands, cleaning it after fishing, when the phone vibrated in his pocket. It was Nathan. "Dad, how are you? Just wanted to check," he wrote. Alex smiled at the corner of his lips and replied, "Everything is fine, son. I fish, fix cars. How are you? Norm. Passed the engine exam. Mom asked about you again. I don't know what to tell her." Alex paused, then typed, "Tell me I'm okay, and that I love you all." He sent the message and turned off the phone. Raising his head, he looked at the river, where the first stars were reflected. This was his life, now modest, quiet, separate from the one he left. He didn't know how long he could hide, but for now this was enough for him. A house by the water, work, children on the other end of the line, and the shadow in which he lived without looking back. While Alex was building his new life in Huntington, West Virginia, a story was unfolding in Riverton that he knew nothing about. Lisa returned from Philadelphia on Sunday, June 30th, and found a note on the kitchen table. Her hand trembled when she read her husband's meager words, "Lies, I can't do it anymore. I need time. Don't look for me. Alex." She stood looking at the paper until tears began to drip onto the salt shaker that held the note. She didn't understand what had happened, but she felt it had something to do with her trip, or with what he might have seen. She called him dozens of times, left messages, but the phone was turned off. In a panic, she called her friends, Ray, even the police, but Alex disappeared like smoke. 2 weeks after he left, Lisa felt the first signs: nausea in the morning, fatigue that did not go away even after sleep. At first, she chalked it up to stress, the loss of her husband, pressure at work, chaos in the family. But when the delay became apparent, she bought the test from the same pharmacy where she got Kelly's Plan B. 2 stripes confirmed her worst fears. She sat on the edge of the bathtub, looking at the plastic strip, and her mind was spinning. This couldn't be from Alex. The vasectomy was done 14 years ago, and they never doubted its reliability. So it was him, Richard Bennett. That night in Philadelphia was not planned. The dinner with Bennett began as a business meeting. He was a key funder of green initiatives, and Lisa wanted to enlist his support for the Stratton project. They talked about subsidies, about the future of the factory, about how his influence could open new doors. The wine flowed like a river. The conversation became personal. He talked about his divorce 2 years ago. She complained of being tired from endless work. One glass turned into three, and then he offered to go up to his room to look at the documents for the new grant. Lisa agreed, without thinking that this would cross the line. There were no documents in the room. There were only his hands, her weak "no" which quickly gave way to silent agreement, and the night, which she regretted before dawn. In the morning she left while he was sleeping and swore to herself that it would never happen again. She didn't tell him anything, didn't take his number, didn't answer his only message a week later. But now this night has returned to her in the form of two stripes. Lisa didn't know that Alex saw her with Bennett. She didn't know that he was watching, that this was the last straw that pushed him to escape. She thought he left because of her late returns, because of her obsession with the project, because their marriage had been cracking at the seams in recent years. And now, with the child inside, she was faced with a choice she didn't want to make. She did not terminate the pregnancy. Not out of moral convictions, but because she couldn't get over herself. The thought of this made her tremble. But she couldn't leave the child either. Alex disappeared. Emma and Nathan were shocked by his departure, and she herself was barely staying afloat. A new child at 44, with a man she barely knew and didn't want to see again, would be a disaster. She decided to go a different route: open adoption. Lisa turned to an agency in Indianapolis, away from Riverton, to avoid rumors. She chose an open option. New parents would know her name, be able to contact her if they wanted, and the child would one day know who his biological mother was. But she did not indicate her father. Richard Bennett remained a shadow that she did not tell anyone about. The agency found a couple, Emily and David Harris, childless teachers from a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. They were kind, calm, with warm smiles in the photo, and Lisa felt it was right. She hid her pregnancy. She wore loose sweaters, attributed her pallor to stress, and worked from home when she could. Emma and Nathan, busy with their college lives, didn't notice their calls were short, full of questions about their father, not about her. Debbie, Alex's mother, once asked if she was sick, but Lisa brushed it off, saying she was just tired. The secret remained with her alone. The girl was born on March 15th at an Indianapolis hospital. Lisa named her Sophia, a name she had once suggested for Emma, but Alex insisted on something else. The birth went quickly, and a few hours later Sophia lay in her arms, tiny, with dark hair and calm eyes that reminded Lisa of someone she didn't want to remember. She held it for a short time, knowing that farewell was inevitable. Emily and David waited in the next room, and when Lisa handed Sophia to them, her heart sank, but she did not cry. She signed the papers, left her contact number, and went home to an empty house on Maple Street. Years have passed. Sophia lived with the Harrises in Columbus. When she was 3 years old, she grew up cheerful and curious, with a mop of dark curls and a habit of putting everything in her mouth. Emily and David adored her, called her their daughter, but did not hide the truth. They told her in simple words that she had a first mother who gave her to them because she could not keep her. They kept a photo of Lisa, one taken in the hospital, where she looked tired but smiling, and promised to show it to Sophia when she grew up and started asking questions. Lisa received letters from them once a year, usually around Christmas. Short notes with photographs: Sophia on the carousel, Sophia with a bowl of dough in the kitchen, Sophia in kindergarten. Lisa kept them in a box under the bed, away from the eyes of Emma and Nathan, who never knew about their sister. She did not answer the letters, but reread them each time, feeling a mixture of relief and pain. Sophia was happy, that was the main thing. Richard Bennett never found out about his daughter. Lisa cut off all contact with him after Philadelphia, and he, busy with his career and new elections, did not look for her. It was late October, and the air smelled of fallen leaves and smoke from fires. Alex was sitting on the veranda, cleaning the carburetor for the old Ford, when he heard the sound of a car approaching. He looked up and saw a gray minivan parked near his fence. Two people came out, a woman with short blonde hair and a man with glasses, both about 40, with tired but determined faces. They didn't look like locals, and Alex tensed, putting the instrument on the table. "Mr. Carter?" the woman asked, coming closer. Her voice trembled, but she tried to remain confident. "Alex Carter." "Who are you?" he answered, standing up and wiping his hands on a rag. Rusty growled from under the veranda, but Alex shushed him. "My name is Emily Harris," she said. "This is my husband, David. We need to talk. This is important." Alex frowned but nodded, pointing to two chairs on the veranda. Sit down. What happened? They sat down, looking at each other, as if deciding who would start. Finally, David spoke. We came from Columbus. We have. Had a daughter, Sophia. She was adopted through an agency 5 years ago, and in the documents you are listed as her father. Alex froze. The word daughter hit him like a wrench to the head. What? I don't have any daughters. I have two children, Emma and Nathan. You are wrong. Emily shook her head, taking a folder out of her bag. We thought it might be a misunderstanding, but here's the birth certificate. She handed him a piece of paper. There, in the father column, was his name, Alexander James Carter. Mother, Lisa Marie Carter. Date of birth, March 15th. The child's name is Sophia. He looked at the paper, feeling the blood drain from his face. It's impossible, he said hoarsely. I left home in June 1944. I had a vasectomy back in 30. I couldn't be a father. David nodded as if he had been expecting this. We understand that this is strange. But Sophia, she got sick. Leukemia. She is 5 years old and urgently needs a bone marrow donor. We passed the tests. Neither Emily nor I are suitable. The agency gave us your information as the biological father. We are here to ask you to get tested. This is her only chance. Emily clenched her hands, her eyes filling with tears. Please, we don't know what happened between you and Lisa, but if you are her father. I'm not her father, Alex interrupted, his voice becoming firmer. He threw the paper on the table and ran his hand through his hair. Lisa, she became pregnant after I left. This is not my child. There was silence. Emily and David looked at him, confused. Finally, Emily asked, Then why is your name on the papers? Alex swallowed, and suddenly everything came together. Philadelphia, Richard Bennett, hotel room. He remembered that evening, her smile at the table, their departure together, and then his escape, her silence. She gave birth 9 months after that night. But instead of listing Bennett, a politician with a reputation and a family, she listed him Alex. Maybe out of habit, maybe to hide the truth, or to protect a child from scandal. Because she didn't want her real father to be found out, he finally said, looking at the Harrises. His name is Richard Bennett, senator from Pennsylvania. This is him. David frowned. Senator Bennett? Are you sure? I saw them together, Alex replied, his voice turning cold. In June 44 in Philadelphia. She was with him at the hotel. I left after that. She apparently didn't tell him, but wrote me in because, I don't know. We were married then. Emily covered her mouth and David shook his head. If it's true, why didn't she tell us? We knew that she was the biological mother, but about the father. She was silent. She hid it from everyone, Alex muttered. From me, from our children, from you. But I can't help you. I'm not her father. You need Bennett. The Harrises sat dumbfounded. Emily began to cry quietly, and David squeezed her hand. Sophia is dying, he said dully. We don't have much time. If you are not the father, but this Bennett, how do we find him? He is a famous person. He will not just take the test at our request. Alex looked at them, at their despair, at the pain in their eyes. He could have stepped aside and said it wasn't his problem. But before him was a girl, even if not his, whose life hung in the balance because of Lisa's lies and Bennett's cowardice. He couldn't look away. I will help you, he finally said, but not by passing the test. We'll make sure he can't get away with it. How? David asked, looking up. Through the media, Alex replied. Bennett is a public figure. If the truth comes out, he won't be able to ignore it. You have evidence, birth certificate, adoption history. I'll give you my part, dates, places, what I saw. We will find a journalist who will dig it up. Emily wiped away her tears. Will you do this, even after everything? Not for her, Alex said, referring to Lisa. For the sake of your girl. The following days passed in feverish preparation. Alex contacted a local journalist from Huntington, an acquaintance of Jack's, who wrote for a small independent newspaper. His name was Troy, a young guy with a sharp tongue and a thirst for big stories. Alex told him everything about Philadelphia, about Bennett, about his departure, about Sophia. The Harrises added documents and medical certificates confirming the girl's diagnosis. Troy grabbed the story like it was a gold mine. A senator, an illegitimate child, and a dying girl. This will blow up the network, he said, flipping through the papers. But we need more. Evidence that he was with Lisa that day. I only have my words, Alex said, and the dates. Check out his schedule for June 44. He was at that conference. Troy nodded. I'll find it. Give me a week. 5 days later, the article appeared in the online edition of the newspaper under the headline, Senator Bennett and the Mystery of His Dying Daughter, A Call for Truth. Troy dug up old notes. Bennett actually spoke at a conference in Philadelphia on June 28th. They added a statement from the Harrises, a copy of Alex's birth certificate, and his statement that he was not the biological father due to a vasectomy. Lisa's name was not mentioned directly, only as birth mother to protect her from unnecessary noise, but the hint was clear. The news was picked up by major publications. Social media exploded with the hashtag #SaveSophia is going viral, and people are demanding answers from Bennett. His office issued a dry statement. The senator does not comment on personal speculation, but the pressure mounted. 3 days later, Bennett gave in. He publicly agreed to take a DNA test to put an end to the rumors. Alex watched the news on the old TV in the house. The test confirmed Richard Bennett was Sophia's father. The senator issued a curt apology, saying that he didn't know about the child and agreed to become a donor. Sophia was transferred to a hospital in Columbus, and the operation was successful. Her life was saved. The Harrises called Alex a week after the transplant. Emily cried into the phone. She's getting better. Thank you. You have no idea what this means to us. Glad she's okay, he replied quietly. Take care of her. He hung up and went out onto the veranda. Rusty lay down next to him, resting his head on his lap. Alex looked at the river, feeling a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. The truth emerged, but not for him, for a girl he never knew. Lisa must have seen the news, knew that he helped, but did not call. He didn't expect this. By the spring of the year, Alex hardly thought about the past. His life in Huntington flowed smoothly. Work in Jack's workshop, evenings with Rusty on the veranda, rare calls to Emma and Nathan, who were now building their own families. Sophia, saved thanks to his help, remained a distant memory. The Harrises sent a card every Christmas, but he did not answer, leaving their gratitude hanging in the air. Lisa hasn't been in touch since the scandal with Bennett, and he hasn't looked for her. Their paths completely diverged, and he came to terms with it. Like rust on an old pickup truck, it can't be removed, but you can move on with your life. But one March day, everything changed. He was sitting in the workshop, rebuilding the engine of an old Chevrolet, when the phone rang, the same push-button one that he kept to communicate with his children. The number was unfamiliar, but had an Indiana area code. Alex frowned and answered. Dad, it's me. Emma's voice trembled, and he immediately realized that something was wrong. Mom died. He froze, the wrench falling from his hand and clanking on the concrete floor. When? He asked, his voice suddenly hoarse. 2 weeks ago, she replied. I only found out yesterday. Her neighbor found her in the house. She's been drinking for a long time, Dad. Nobody knew how bad it was. Alex was silent, digesting the words. Emma continued, her voice breaking. She lost her job at Stratton a couple of years ago when the factory closed. Then the house was taken over for debt. She lived in some rented apartment and hardly went out. The neighbor said it was probably alcohol. The liver was failing. She was buried quietly, without ceremony. I didn't even have time to arrive. He closed his eyes, feeling something squeezing in his chest, not pain, not anger, but something heavy and quiet. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I didn't know how to find you, she admitted. You didn't leave an address. Nathan remembered you mentioned Huntington, and we found you through Jack. Dad, I'm sorry. Me too, he said, and it was true. Not anger, not relief, just regret. About the woman he loved for more than half his life, about how she broke, about the fact that he did not see this end. After the call, Alex sat in the garage for a long time, looking into space. Jack noticed his condition and silently brought the beer, placing the can on the workbench. Bad news? He asked. Lisa died, Alex answered without looking at him. I drank myself. Jack whistled but didn't say anything, just patted him on the shoulder and walked away. Alex opened the beer, took a sip, and felt the cold bitterness spread down his throat. He was not angry with her neither for betrayal, nor for lying, nor for the fact that she included him in Sophia's documents. All this was too long ago, too far away. She paid her price, and he paid his. Now she was gone, and with her went the last thread that connected him with that life. He thought about her that night, lying in the darkness of his house. I remembered her laughter in her youth, her stubbornness, her hands when she taught Emma to hold a spoon. Then her fatigue, her detachment, her withdrawal into herself after Philadelphia. He didn't know when she started drinking, but he could imagine. Loneliness, job loss, children far away, him a ghost she couldn't find. She couldn't cope, and he didn't save her. But there was no anger, only silence. A week later, he decided to go to the children. Emma lived in Bloomington with her husband and 2-year-old daughter, Lily. Nathan settled in Indianapolis, worked at an auto repair shop, and had recently become the father of a son, whom he named James after his grandfather, he told Alex over the phone. They had been calling him to come back into their lives ever since they found out about Sophia, but he stayed away. Now, after Lisa's death, he realized that he no longer wanted to be a shadow. He called them the next day. Nat, I'll come, he said simply. I want to see you and grandchildren. Emma cried into the phone. Dad, really? Aren't you going to disappear again? I won't get lost, he promised. It's time to go home. Nathan was more reserved, but there was joy in his voice. Come, old man. James is already turning the keys like you. Alex got ready quickly. He put some clothes in his backpack and left his tools in the house. He decided that he would come back for them later if he wanted. He told Jack that he was taking a vacation, and he just nodded. Don't disappear forever, Carter. Rusty went with him. The dog climbed into the passenger seat of the pickup truck, sticking out his tongue as if he knew what the road was waiting for them. He set out at dawn, when the river was still shrouded in fog. Huntington was left behind, and with him years of loneliness. The road to Indiana was familiar, but now it led not to the past, but to something new. He thought about Lisa, how she left, and how he almost lost everything. But his children and grandchildren were ahead of him, and that gave him purpose. First stop, Bloomington. Emma met him at the house and rushed to hug him, not allowing him to get out of the car. Lily, a small version of Emma with brown curls, reached out to him, calling him grandfather. Then Indianapolis, where Nathan slapped him on the back and showed him James, a tough little guy with his eyes. They talked about little things, about work, about the weather, about how Lily loves dogs, and James was already trying to make sense of everything that came to hand. Lisa was mentioned in passing. Emma said she was sorry she didn't notice her fall, and Nathan added that she didn't want their help. Alex nodded, and that was the end of the topic. He stayed with the children for a week, then another. They persuaded him to move closer, and he did not argue. Huntington was a refuge, but not a home. He sold the river house through Jack, moved Rusty and the tools to Indianapolis, where Nathan helped him find a job in his service department. Emma was an hour away, and he became a full-time grandfather, tinkering with Lily and James, teaching them how to hold a screwdriver, reading fairy tales that he had never read to his children. Lisa left quietly, and he accepted it without anger. She was part of his story, but not his end. Now his life was filled with the laughter of his grandchildren, the smell of machine oil, and the warmth of the family that he almost lost. He looked at James, turning the toy key, and thought that this was a new chapter, not loud, not ideal, but real. And for the first time in many years, he felt like he was back home.